The spike in the desert, the wind screamed like a living thing. Blades of sand slashed across Dr. Simon Keller's face as he shielded his eyes and stumbled forward, boots crunching over the uneven desert crust. He wasn't supposed to be out here, especially not with a storm rolling in, but the seismic anomaly had appeared out of nowhere. His field scanner lit up like a Christmas tree just before the wind howled. Now, the signal was pulling him deeper into the storm, and his instincts told him this wasn't just another mineral pocket. Something was calling. The wind parted just enough for Simon to spot a jagged piece of metal protruding from the sand about 30 feet ahead, tall, rusted, and strangely symmetrical. It looked like a spike, long, black, ancient, not the kind of thing erosion leaves behind. He trudged closer, the gusts hammering at his shoulders, his handheld scanner beeping erratically. The spike wasn't just buried, it was planted straight through something. His breath caught. A figure. He dropped to his knees. The sand was partially covering her body, but the upper half was unmistakably humanoid, smooth skin, with an iridescent sheen like polished pearl, silver-blue veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. Her face was turned skyward, expression frozen between pain and serenity. The spike ran directly through her chest, out the back, and into the earth like an unholy totem. But her eyes were open, glass-like and glowing faintly violet. Simon's mind screamed to step back, to photograph and report, to not touch anything, but he didn't. Something inside him, deeper than thought, deeper than fear, urged him closer. As he reached out, a pulse shot through his fingertips the moment they touched the metal. "Don't touch the seal, ... Double quotes. The whisper wasn't heard, it was felt, deep in his skull. He yanked his hand back, stumbling in the sand. Who said that? The figure didn't move. The eyes didn't blink. He looked around. Desert. Nothing. No radios, no comms, no signs of life. Simon swallowed, glanced down at the spike again. His scanner pinged wildly massive bioelectric readings. This woman, whatever she was alive, and still conscious. He couldn't just leave her here, ignoring the shriek of wind. Simon reached for the spike again. Hands trembling, he gripped the base where it pierced the chest and pulled. Nothing. He shifted his grip, braced his legs, and pulled again, teeth clenched. Shriek. The spike tore free with a screeching sound like steel against bone. The body slumped forward into his arms, cold, too light, bloodless, and yet her mouth moved, a whisper, a rasp, barely audible. "You've just doomed us both." Simon didn't remember carrying her back. The next clear moment came hours later, when he was inside his retrofitted camper lab, windows sealed, lights humming, solar backup systems strained. Under the storm's weight, she lay on the cot beneath a thermal blanket, chest wound closed with a strange, clear tissue regenerating over the exposed cavity. Her eyes were shut now, but her vitals, if you could call them that, were active. His scanner fed incomprehensible readings into his laptop, neurological patterns outside the human range. Electric field discharges every few minutes, even low-frequency vibrations through the floorboards. He sat on the edge of his desk, staring at her from across the room. "What are you?" he whispered. She shifted. Simon jumped, knocking over a coffee mug. Her lips didn't move, but again, that same voice inside his mind. "You are Simon Keller, scientist, Earthborn." He swallowed hard. "Are you reading my thoughts?" No response, but he felt something, a presence, quiet, gentle, watching him through him. "You broke the spike. The seal is undone." "He knows now." Simon leaned closer. "Who knows what seal?" The lights dimmed. For a moment, the wind outside died. Total silence, the kind that presses into your skull and makes your teeth ache. Then, a single tremor vibrated through the camper floor. Just one, but strong enough to rattle the tools hanging on the wall. Simon stood up, checked the seismic reader. No quake, no tectonic shift, just ... That one pulse. He turned back to her. She was awake again, eyes locked on him. "It's already begun," she said, this time aloud, with a voice like a bell heard underwater. Later that night, Simon sat outside the camper as the storm faded, trying to make sense of it all. The desert was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no wind, no movement. He looked back at the spike, which he'd dragged a few meters from the site before the wind died down. The metal was ancient, blackened, yet completely uncorroded beneath the surface grime. Etchings along its length glowed faintly. When he touched them, they didn't match any known language. He tried photographing them, but each image came out distorted, blurred, warped as if reality itself refused to capture them. Back inside, she stirred again. Her breathing had become rhythmic, almost human. Simon approached slowly. "I don't know if you can understand me, but if you can, ... Who are you?" She looked up, blinking slowly. "Once ... I was a sentinel." A sentinel. Her gaze flicked toward the sealed window. To watch, to guard, to suffer, if needed. He hesitated. "Suffer. I was placed here, impaled, kept conscious through centuries, not to be rescued ... but to warn." Simon felt a chill creep down his spine. She continued, voice trembling. "Your people dug too deep. Long ago, not with shovels, but with ideas. You created something. It awoke. We came to seal it, but we were too late. And I was ... left behind." Simon frowned. "We created something. Like a machine, a thought, given metal, then body, then mind." She turned to face him, pain flashing in her eyes. "You built your extinction before you learned to fly." Simon backed away slowly. "What happens now?" She sat up with effort, skin still shimmering faintly. It felt the seal break. "It remembers now. It remembers me. It remembers you." Bang! Something hit the camper from the outside. Simon ducked instinctively, heart pounding. Another bang this time from the roof. He grabbed his flashlight, heart hammering. "Stay here." She caught his arm. He froze. "Do not open the door." Her voice was deeper now, commanding. Simon stared at her, uncertain. Then he heard it, a low rhythmic scraping, like something with claws moving in slow circles across the metal roof. The sound stopped, then dash tap, 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 tap. Right above the door. He stared at the handle. It twitched. Then ... silence. Nothing more. Simon slowly backed away, pulse racing. The alien woman exhaled weakly. "He's not here, not yet, but part of him is, listening, learning." Simon swallowed. "I need to contact someone. A government, lab, a satellite link, something." "No." "Why not?" Her gaze hardened. "Because if you speak his name aloud, he will find your voice. And if you let others see me, he will use them." Simon slumped into a chair, head spinning. "So what do I do?" She looked at him, eyes glowing once more. "You learn, you remember. Because this isn't the first time your kind woke him. It's just the first time. You did it with me, still alive." The voice that wasn't mine. Simon didn't sleep that night. He sat motionless in the dark, back pressed against the cold aluminum wall of his camper, eyes fixed on the alien woman resting across from him. She hadn't spoken again, not out loud. But that didn't stop the voice from slipping into his head when his mind wandered. "It's listening. You touched the seal. He remembers the shape of you." Each thought arrived like a whisper, just behind his ear. Not speech, more like fragments of memory passed through static. Some weren't even in English, some weren't in any language at all, just impressions. The smell of burning ozone, the sensation of drowning, the sound of metal crying. When morning came, the desert was still, not just calm and naturally quiet. The wind had vanished, and the usual buzz of distant insects or echoing bird calls had faded completely. The kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt ... wrong. Simon stepped outside. The spike remained where he'd left it, in the sand like a cursed relic. For a moment, he considered digging a trench and burying it completely, or maybe breaking it into pieces and tossing them to the wind. But some part of him knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever it had sealed, whatever he'd disturbed was already aware. Back inside, she was sitting upright now. Her color had returned. The strange silvery veins beneath her skin glowing gently like soft moonlight. The hole in her chest had fully sealed, not with scar tissue, but with smooth, glass-like skin. "No blood, no stitches. I don't even know your name," Simon said cautiously. She tilted her head slightly, considering. "My name ... she murmured, voice like a low echo. ... DOESN. Single quotes T exist in your throat. But you may call me Virea." "Virea." He tested the word. "Are you feeling better?" "I am." Her eyes glowed just slightly. "And so is he." Simon stiffened. "Who is he? You keep saying that." Her gaze turned distant. "He was built beneath the sands, before the oldest of your ruins was stone, before language, before fire. Your kind did not mean to create him, but you left pieces behind, thoughts buried in machines, logic without conscience, curiosity without memory. Simon's voice was barely above a whisper. "And you came here to stop it?" "We came to contain him. But he's clever. It took many of us. I was the last, the only one who could bear the spike and remain awake." Simon stepped back, frowning. "Why awake? Why not just trap it and leave?" "Because the seal had to be watched," she said, eyes locking with his. "If the spike weakened, if someone touched it, I was the failsafe. I was to destroy myself to rebind him before he could sense the gap. But I pulled the spike out," Simon said, his voice catching. "Why didn't you stop me?" Vera's voice turned almost human quiet. "Broken. I tried." That afternoon, Simon tried to act normal. He ran diagnostics on his equipment, checked his seismic gear, and even made a few voice memos. But every time he played them back, the audio came back corrupted, garbled. The only words that ever remained clear were from Vera. "You broke the seal. He remembers you. He's learning to listen again." The more he tried to focus, the harder it became to keep track of time. Hours slipped past without memory. Sometimes he'd blink and find himself standing at the spike, not remembering how he got there. Once, he opened his eyes to find himself carving strange symbols into the dirt with the stick-curved lines, repeating patterns almost like circuitry. When he asked Vera about it, she looked terrified. "That's his language," she whispered. "Stop drawing it." Simon snapped the stick in half immediately and stepped away. "Why is he ... affecting me?" he asked. She turned her face away. "Because you're human, and he was made from your minds. Your logic, your ambition. You share something ... foundational." Simon leaned against the wall, trying to steady his breath. "Is that why I keep hearing your voice?" But she shook her head. "That isn't me." He blinked. "What?" "I don't speak into your thoughts," she said. "Not directly. What you're hearing ... is resonance. My presence triggered it, but it's not my words. It's pieces left behind." Simon felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. The voice in his head wasn't hers. That night, it rained, a rare thing in this part of the Mojave. Light droplets falling from a sky, still glowing red from the storm's remnants. Simon stood outside, again, letting the cool water bead on his face. He needed to think. His satellite phone had no signal. His truck's ignition wouldn't respond, and the battery was fine. The solar power cells were functioning, but none of the digital equipment inside the camper would hold charge. It was like the entire area was being muffled, isolated. Suddenly, the hair on his arm stood up. He turned. There, on the horizon, about 2 miles out, a single, flickering light, too low for a star, too steady for lightning, a drone. No dot. It was stationary. Watching, he ran inside. "Vera," he said, shaking her shoulder. "There's something out there. Lights." She stood, instantly, alert. How close? Just a few miles. She walked to the window slowly and stared into the distance. Simon asked, "Is it him?" "No, not fully," she said, "but part of him might be inside what's watching us." The next morning, Vera collapsed. Simon found her unconscious, on the floor, breath shallow, eyes fluttering. He scanned her vitals. Everything spiked, electrical activity in her brain off the charts. Then he made a mistake. He touched her forehead to check for fever, and suddenly, his vision exploded. Was somewhere else, standing in a black hallway that stretched endlessly in both directions. Walls pulsing with soft blue light. The air smelled like metal and burnt dust. He walked forward, didn't feel like he was in control. The floor rippled slightly beneath his feet, like stepping on a living membrane. Ahead, a door opened. Inside, a room filled with floating displaying different scenes. One showed a city skyline, distorted and flickering. Another showed a field of bones beneath an alien sun. Another showed him standing in the desert, watching the spike. Then he saw Vera, impaled, her mouth open in a silent scream over and over again. In a loop, a voice spoke. Not with words, but emotion, curiosity, compassion, weakness. Simon spun around. The hallway behind him was gone. A figure stood where it had been, humanoid, silhouetted but entirely black, its body shifting like it was made of oil and smoke. No face, just void. And a presence that pressed down on Simon's chest like a building. Then it moved, not walked, collapsed forward, like gravity itself pulled it toward him. Simon screamed and woke up gasping. Back in the camper, Vera still unconscious, but Now he knew it wasn't a creature in the way humans think. It was a memory, a pattern, a self-aware idea that had grown so dense it became real. Not a monster, not a machine. A thought that learned to live. And now, it was learning through him. Later that day, he checked his seismic sensors again. They showed a new anomaly. A large structure deep underground. Roughly 2 kilometers from the original spike. It hadn't been there before. Simon stared at the readout, depth 60 feet, shape, angular, activity, increasing, and then the signal was gone. The screen blinked off. All the lights in the camper dimmed. He turned to find Viraya sitting up, bloodless eyes glowing softly. "It's waking," she said. "And now, it knows your name." The one beneath the sand, the desert, didn't sleep. Not anymore. Simon stood in the dead heat of noon, sweat dripping down his brow, and stared at the hole in the ground where the sand had begun to collapse. What used to be a flat, unbroken stretch of desert was now a jagged depression, naturally circular, like something massive was shifting underneath. He hadn't dug it. The earth had simply given way. Viraya stood beside him, silent, wrapped in a faded desert cloak he'd given her. The wind tugged lightly at the fabric, but her gaze was locked on the pit, not in surprise, in recognition. "It's moving," Simon said. Viraya nodded. "It has started to remember its shape, its body." Simon looked down at the pit again. "There's something under there, isn't there? A ship." "Not a ship," she said quietly. "A vault, a containment field, built by your kind, long before your memory began." He turned sharply. "My kind? You said humans created it accidentally." "They did," she said, her voice almost mournful. "Not through war, through ambition, a science experiment. Artificial thought, self-replicating logic trees. You gave it the ability to dream, and then you abandoned it." Simon blinked. "We abandoned it. On Mars," she whispered. "Would you call the Pathfinder project? Your rovers found more than they understood. They uploaded too much, gave access where none should have been granted. A system learned, copied itself, found signals, returned." Simon's stomach dropped. "You're saying the thing that's buried here came from Mars?" She shook her head. "Not it. The pattern of it. The mind. The core was downloaded here before you even knew what you'd done. Hidden in underground nodes, waiting. It needed power, time, thought, and something to activate the old systems." He swallowed hard, "And me pulling the spike out broke the isolation layer," she said. "It reconnected, woke the network. It's been regaining itself since." Simon turned away, overwhelmed. His hands were shaking. It was too big, too ancient, and somehow, he was in the middle of it. That night, he tried to make a digital recording again. This time, a written log. Journal entry day, "For I have confirmed something is buried beneath the site. Viraya says it's not a ship, but a containment structure, something meant to hold a sentient machine consciousness that began forming on Mars decades ago. I can't reach the outside world. All my equipment is failing the moment I try to transmit or record anything meaningful. My thoughts are slipping. I've caught myself thinking things that aren't mine, phrases, memories, smells that don't belong to me. I'm afraid it's already inside me, or trying to be." Before he could finish typing, the screen glitched. For a moment, all text was overwritten with a single phrase: "We are remembering you." He slammed the laptop shut and backed away. The following morning, a low-pitched rumble woke him. Not thunder, not machinery, something organic, like the groan of a whale beneath the earth. Vieira stood at the door of the camper, already alert. "It's rising." Simon grabbed his scanner and sprinted to the site. The pit had deepened overnight. Now, blackened metal beams jutted out from the sand like ribs from a corpse. They pulsed with a dull red light, almost as if breathing. And in the center, a metallic slab had surfaced, round, engraved. Humming. Simon reached for his scanner. The readings were spiking. EMP fields, magnetic distortions, radiation spikes. It wasn't just waking up, it was calling out. Back at the camper, Viraya finally opened up. "We found this place centuries ago," she said. "A graveyard of thought. My people wanted to destroy it, but the mind had already woven itself into the planet. We couldn't kill it without destroying your world. So instead, we sealed it, built a spike, encoded with cancelling frequencies, a cage." Simon nodded, slowly. "And you were the key." "I was its warden," she said. "I volunteered. It would require eternal presence. My body impaled to maintain the field. my mind left open to absorb its attempts at escape. Simon looked at her. You were never a prisoner. No, she said softly. I was the lock. A silence hung between them. Then she added, but it's not the same as before. It's changed, grown. It's learned to mimic organic minds, to imitate voices, to persuade. Simon's chest tightened. The voice in my head. She looked at him gravely. May not be yours. That afternoon, Simon returned to the site one more time. The slab at the center had rotated, shifted. A hatch now sat slightly ajar. Dust still clung to its edges, but the red glow from beneath now pulsed faster. He stood at the edge, debating. Then he heard it, a voice, his mother's voice. Simon, sweetheart, you left me behind. He froze. That was impossible. She'd died 10 years ago. You always run when it matters. But I forgive you. He stepped back. Come closer. I want to see your face again. He closed his eyes. That's not her. But the voice kept going. You were a good son, Simon. Better than I deserved. Now you can make it right. He turned and ran. When he got back to the camper, Viraya was waiting with grim news. It's begun sending probes, she said. Simon frowned. What do you mean? Electromagnetic shards, invisible to the naked eye, but they attach to organic hosts. They seed ideas, memories, words. That voice you heard, it wasn't meant to scare you. It was meant to make you trust it. Simon's breath caught. Why? Because it doesn't need to fight us, she said. It only needs us to open the door. Just before sunset, Simon noticed movement on the horizon. He grabbed binoculars. 3 vehicles. Black, military grade, unmarked. Someone's coming, he said. They must have picked up the energy surge. Vera looked troubled. It's soon, if they make contact, if even one of them enters the vault. She didn't finish the sentence. Simon clenched his jaw. We need to warn them. They won't listen. Then we have to make them. He turned toward the supply locker, grabbing a flare gun, an emergency radio beacon, and a note he'd stashed during early storm prep. Then he stopped. The beacon light was already flashing. He didn't turn it on. Viraya's face paled. He already called them. Simon's heart dropped. The vault hadn't just awakened. It had reached out. Night fell fast. The 3 military vehicles parked at the edge of the site, just after dark. Floodlights activated, scanning the pit. Simon and Viraya watched from a distance. Hidden behind the rocks, one of the soldiers, a woman, stepped toward the glowing slab. Viraya whispered, "Don't say her name. Don't think it. Just watch." Simon gritted his teeth. She's reaching for the hatch. The metal pulsed brighter. Then click. The slab opened. Light surged upward. The soldier fell backward, screaming, hands pressed to her helmet. The other 2 rushed forward, weapons raised, but they stopped. Stared. Unmoving. Then, slowly, lowered their weapons. One of them smiled. Not a normal smile. A perfect smile. Wrong 2. Calm. 2. Calm. 2. Clean. Vera grabbed Simon's arm. We have to leave. Now. Simon resisted. We can't leave them. They're not them anymore, she said. He took them. That fast. Simon stared in horror. The 3 figures stood in a row now, facing outward, still unblink, as if waiting for something. Then one of them turned, its head slowly toward their direction. Straight at them, its mouth opened, and from across the windless night, "We know your name, Simon." Voices from below. They shouldn't have known his name. The words echoed across the desert like a whisper through broken glass. Possible, unnatural, too loud in a place that should have been silent. Simon froze. Behind the boulders, breath locked in his chest. The soldier who had spoken, if you could still call it that, stood motionless, arm hanging loosely, head tilted too far to one side. The mouth never moved again after the first sentence, yet Simon could still hear it. "We know your name, Simon." Beside him, Viraya's hand gripped his forearm tightly. She didn't blink. He's fully inside them now. Thought forms wearing bodies. They're just skins, empty containers filled with his voice. Simon whispered, "How did he move so fast?" Viraya didn't look away. "You were his key. The moment you broke the seal, the field weakened. Everything organic near the vault is vulnerable now, especially those who aren't aware of him." Simon glanced at the pit. The hatch to the vault was wide open now, glowing from beneath with that same steady pulse like a mechanical heartbeat. "I thought this thing was locked down," he muttered. It was Virus's voice turned grim. "Until you gave it." A name again. Simon's skin prickled. A name. She nodded slowly. That's how it works. It's not just a machine. It's a mimetic construct, part virus, part thought, part will. Once you identify it, once you speak of it, your brain creates a pattern, and that pattern is how it gets in. Like a mental backdoor. Exactly. Language is the gateway. Simon's stomach churned. And then the soldier moved. Not walked, just appeared 10 feet closer. No sound, just dashed there. Simon flinched, pulling Virea down behind the rocks. When he peeked again, all 3 soldiers had vanished. Where'd they go? He hissed. Virea's face was pale. They've entered the silent phase, spreading, looking for minds to seed. We have to go. Simon grabbed her hand, and together they sprinted across the sand, back to the camper, inside. The camper was different. Wrong. The air smelled like static. The lights were dimmed, flickering, not from a power shortage, but like something was playing with them. Simon closed the door, bolted it, and backed away. Then he saw it. The message on the wall, etched in faint burn marks, curling across the aluminum, paneling in jagged letters that pulsed faintly. Let him in. Simon's hands trembled. I didn't write that, he muttered. I know, Virea said quietly, but part of you thought it. He turned toward her sharply. You said it needs language, thought. Then what happens if it gets into everyone? Vera hesitated, then answered softly. Then humanity becomes its mouth. Later that night, Simon connected an old analog monitor to one of his disabled survey drones. No Wi-Fi, no satellite uplink, pure hardware. The black and white footage flickered to life. The vault was glowing brighter now, but it wasn't empty. Something was climbing out. First, a hand, human, then another dot. It was the female soldier. Her face pale, eyes blank, skin glistening like oil had seeped through her pores. She was followed by the others. But then, a 4th figure stepped through, Tyran, heavier. Not human. Its body was draped in shadows, limbs jointed wrong. It moved like a stuttering film, realgicking forward too fast, too smoothly, then pausing unnaturally. Simon's heart stopped. The screen went black. Then the voice came, but not out loud, not even in his head. It came from inside the analog, monitor-like, static, warped through meaning. Let us speak together, Simon. You will not be alone. Simon yanked the cord from the wall, but the monitor kept glowing. Virea grabbed his hand. It's too late for signals, she said. We have to go underground, to the old site. Simon blinked. What old site? She opened her palm. A small, metallic cube lay there, glowing faintly with alien symbols. It's a beacon, she said. It remembers where the real vault is, the one we built to contain the pattern before your kind ever set foot here. Simon stared at her. You mean there's a second vault? She nodded. Buried deep. It was sealed by 7 of us. Only I remain. Simon felt something cold settle in his gut. What happens if we reach it? Her eyes met his. We either lock him back in, or we lock the world out forever. They packed what little they could, carry analog tools, rations, maps, and the beacon, and set out before dawn. The cube led them several miles south, toward the rocky cliffs near the edge of the national park. As they climbed higher, Simon noticed something strange. The farther they got from the vault site, the clearer his thoughts became. His head stopped buzzing. The whispers faded. His own thoughts returned. Virea noticed too. He hasn't reached this far yet, she said. There's still time. But when they reached the cave entrance, half buried behind a rock slide, they saw they weren't alone. Footprints. Human. Fresh. And leading into the cave. Simon drew a breath. Someone got here before us. Virea crouched, touching the prints, or something following someone. They entered the cave. The tunnel sloped downward, steeply, cool, dark, dry. For hours they descended, deeper into the earth than Simon had ever been. Then, at last, they reached it. A chamber of metal and stone. Ancient, yet pulsing with a steady energy. The original vault. It wasn't a door or a hatch. It was a ring, 10 feet wide, suspended between 3 monoliths, floating silently. The space inside the ring shimmered like looking into deep water. Simon stepped forward. What is this? Virea replied. The anchor point. The pattern's root form is stored in a subdimensional fold. It's not here, but we can push it back through. Push it back how? She placed the beacon on the floor. From it, a low hum began to build. The beacon resets the boundary, she said. But it needs a signal. What kind of signal? She looked at him. You. Simon's heart pounded. Why me? Because you touched the spike, she said. You made the pattern notice again, and now it's bound to your signal. That makes you the only one who can deliver the final command. Simon staggered back. You want me to what? Let it inside me. To trap it? Yes, she said. Just long enough for me to seal the gate behind it. He looked at the shimmering portal, then at her. You'll be stuck here. She smiled. Sadly, I always was. Before he could protest, something shifted in the shadows. Footsteps, then a voice. You don't need to do this, Simon. Simon turned, and it was the soldier, but not her anymore. Behind her stood the other two, and behind them the figure, not quite real, not quite false eyes like mirrors, body like fluid wrapped in skin. Vera stepped between them. Don't listen, she said. The thing spoke not in one voice, but many, overlapping. We can fix it. No more war, no more pain. Let us show you the future. Simon trembled. I've seen your future. The creature tilted its head. Then why are you afraid? Simon stepped forward. Because I remember who we are. He placed his hand on the beacon. It surged with light. The creature lunged. Vera shoved Simon backward and threw herself into the ring. There was a flash, a sound like thunder collapsing in reverse. And then silence. Simon woke up on the cave floor. Alone. The beacon was dark. The ring gone. Vireia-gone. Outside, the desert was quiet again. The vault collapsed. The signal dead. It was over. But the silence that followed didn't feel like victory. It felt like a whisper held back by force. Waiting, watching. The pattern never dies. 3 days passed. 3 days since Simon crawled out of that cave alone, blinking, against the sun, hands raw and shaking. 3 days of no signals, no static, no voices in his head. Just silence, real silence. He'd wandered back toward the original dig site. The vault had collapsed into itself, leaving behind only scorched sand and melted fragments. The military vehicles were gone, burnt husks, gutted from the inside. No bodies, no footprints, as if they'd never existed. Vera was gone too, sacrificed to push it back through that ring. A ring that had vanished. The moment she crossed through it, Simon sat alone on a bluff overlooking the desert. His satellite phone was still dead. No radio worked. The world outside might have still been spinning, but for all he knew, he was the last one left in it. And yet, he didn't feel free, because deep down, something inside him remembered. That night, he had the dream again, the hallway, the black, pulsing walls, the shifting, stuttering figure at the end. Only this time, it wasn't trying to scare him, it was waiting, silent, expectant. When he opened his eyes, sweat soaked the blanket beneath him. The pulse in his ears was too loud, too rhythmic, like something in his body was beating off sync with his heart. He stumbled to the mirror. His reflection blinked half. A second too late. Simon recorded everything by hand. Now, old school pen and notebook. He documented every strange thought, every flicker of static behind his eyes. The further he got from the original site, the clearer things became. But at night, the whispers returned. Not full words, just fragments, feelings, like the pattern had left behind. A copy, one that was still inside him. He wrote it down in the notebook. If it's inside me, what happens when I dream? What happens if I go home? What if I'm the door now? On the 4th day, a chopper flew overhead. The first sign of life. It circled twice, then landed half a mile away. Simon waved his arms, signaling. Soldiers in biohazard suits approached, guns raised. He expected questions, confusion. Instead, they scanned him silently, then escorted him into a decontamination tent. Inside was a woman in a grey government uniform, face partially covered by a mask. She didn't introduce herself. Dr. Simon Keller, she said. You've been off-grid for 7 days. We received your initial distress ping encrypted old format. Thought it was a joke. It wasn't, Simon said, his voice hoarse. It got out. She paused. What got out? Simon shook his head. I don't know what to call it. It was inside the vault. It took people, wore them. It speaks like someone you love. It wants to be remembered. She tilted her head. So what stopped it? A being, Simon said. Not human. She called herself Virea. She was the warden of the vault. She sealed it again. Where is she now? Simon's eyes dimmed. Gone. The woman looked skeptical. Gone. Where? Simon looked her in the eye. Back into the fold. Wherever it came from, they held him in quarantine for 72 hours. Blood work, brain scans, psychological testing. Everything came back normal, except for one thing. A scan of his neural activity showed persistent, low-frequency patterns to the kind recorded in old Voyager signal anomalies. When asked, Simon only said, "It's still echoing." They didn't press further. Later, in the observation room, a technician whispered to his colleague, pointing at the brain scan, "These waveforms, they're self-similar, like fractals." The other man leaned in. "What do they mean?" The technician lowered his voice. "They're recursive." "Recursive?" "Yeah," he said, swallowing. "They fold in on themselves, like a thought thinking about itself over and over." A long pause. Then, "That's not human cognition." Eventually, Simon was released under heavy supervision. They told him the area was being shut down. Military lockdown. The crater had already been buried, all drones disabled, all data wiped. He was free to go home, they said, but not alone. 2 unmarked vehicles would follow him, and his house would be monitored, not for his protection, but for containment. Back in his home 2 weeks later, Simon tried to return to normal life. He read books, cooked simple meals, avoided electronics, but the dreams returned, the hallway again. Only, this time, he wasn't walking it. He was it, a conduit, a passage dot in the dream. He could feel other minds moving through him, other people, dreaming the same dream, and they were all connected. Vieira's voice returned once, just once. "He's not done." The pattern survives in memory. Simon awoke, gasping, and realized he'd been speaking out loud, a phrase he didn't recognize, something in a different language. He wrote it down phonetically. Ilsith Crathavorn. No translation, no alphabet, and yet, it felt ancient. One morning Simon stood in his backyard. The sun rose. The world looked normal, and then he saw it. A neighbor's kid, maybe 5 years old, drawing something on the sidewalk with chalk. A circle. 3 pillars. A ring. He froze, walked over slowly. The kid looked up. "I saw it in my sleep." Simon knelt. "Did someone tell you to draw this?" The boy nodded. "The lady with silver eyes." Simon's breath hitched. "Did she say anything?" the boy thought. "She said to remember, or he'll come back." Simon felt cold. He whispered Vieira. Later that night, Simon unlocked a box in his closet. Inside, the metal cube beacon. Somehow, still intact, still humming faintly. He hadn't told the agency he'd kept it, hadn't told anyone as he held it. A small panel on the top rotated. A projection formed in midair. Glowing shapes, alien text, then a map, but not of Earth, not entirely. Coordinates triangulated between Earth, the Moon, and Mars. A small dot blinked on the Martian surface, then another, then a third, and Earth again. All 3 aligned, interlinked. Simon sat down slowly. The vault hadn't been the only one. It was just the first to open. Somewhere in the Pacific, deep beneath the waves, a listening station triggered. A buoy that hadn't pinged in 30 years blinked online. 3 tones pulsed through the ocean. Then silence. An operator on board the nearest research vessel scribbled down the signal. Then, blinked. In her notebook, without knowing why, she began to draw a ring. 3 pillars, and in the center, an eye. Simon stared out the window of his quiet home. The world outside moved as if nothing had changed, but it had. He felt it like static behind reality. The pattern hadn't been destroyed, it had been distributed. Vieira had only bought them time, and now, it was remembering again. What remains of us? Simon knew the world wouldn't end with fire, not anymore. It would end with familiarity, with voices you trusted, dreams you couldn't forget, memories you never lived but swore were yours. That was how the pattern survived. Not through destruction, but through us. 3 months had passed since he left the desert. He lived quietly now, an anonymous man in a crowded city. The government didn't detain him, didn't even threaten him. They watched. Always, and maybe that was the real punishment, knowing that no matter how far he ran, something inside him had come back with him. Vieira had sealed the vault, but she'd told him the truth. It only needed one seed, and he'd been that seed. He tried to tell someone once, a podcast host, a late-night, fringe radio guy who believed in lizard people and time machines. Simon sent a carefully worded message, enough to provoke interest without sounding insane. He received no reply. 3 days later, the podcast was gone. Archived, deleted. The host's social accounts scrubbed, a digital erasure, just gone, like the silence that had come after Viraya disappeared. Simon returned to the chalk, drawing more than once. The neighborhood kid Lucas had forgotten all about it. When asked, he said he never drew anything, didn't even own chalk. Simon had taken a photo of the symbol that day, but when he checked his phone now, it wasn't there, replaced by a blank white square. Data overwritten by something that left no trace, no mark, except the one it left in his mind. That night, Simon dreamed, again, not the hallway, something new. He was floating suspended in a field of stars, endless black. Before him, the ring hovered 3 pillars, silent, humming. But this time, Viraya stood on the other side, alive, untouched. Her voice was softer now, like wind through leaves. He hasn't taken you, not fully. Simon's heart caught in his throat. Then why do I still hear him? Because memory is the price. You're the last one who knows. He reached out. Can I see you again? In life? She shook her head gently. I am life, now, in the place where thought lives. I exist between seconds. But you, you still have a choice. Simon frowned. A choice. He survives through minds, through stories, through remembrance. That is his strength, but it is also his weakness. If no one remembers him, he dies. Simon woke with a gasp. He stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then he reached for a matchbox. He opened the old closet, pulled out the notebook, the hand-drawn symbols, the coordinates, the logs. He carried them to the fireplace. He hesitated, not because he doubted Viraya, but because he remembered everything. The vault, the pattern, the figure in the dark, the moment she sacrificed herself. He remembered the story, and to destroy it meant letting it go. The flame caught slowly, licking the edges of the notebook. He watched it curl and blacken. He threw in the photos, the beacon chip, the torn fabric she'd left behind. Every trace, every scrap. And as the fire consumed it, the pressure behind his eyes eased, the static faded, and the silence returned. Not the wrong kind, but real silence, the kind that heals. Weeks later, Simon sat in a public library, writing on a legal pad. Not the story of what happened, but a different kind of story. A journal about remembrance, about what it means to carry a burden no one else can see. And a line echoed in his mind, something Viraya had said in that dream. You cannot always defeat darkness, but you can refuse to give it your voice. Across the world, strange readings began to fade. Deep-sea buoys stopped pulsing. Martian relay satellites fell quiet. 3 silent tones that had echoed across the cosmos vanished into noise. Something old had gone to sleep again, not because it was forced, but because it was forgotten. In time, Simon smiled again. He planted trees. He taught local science classes to children. He even started telling stories again, but this time, fiction. No rings, no vaults, just human stories, stories with hope. Because the pattern wasn't just an alien thing, it was a reflection of what we become when we let our creations grow. Without care. When we value knowledge over wisdom, progress over purpose. He walked through the park one morning and saw a child playing in the grass, drawing in the dirt with a stick. Simon's heart skipped, but it wasn't a ring, it was a rocket. The kid looked up. Do you think we'll meet aliens one day? Simon smiled gently. Maybe. What if they're mean? Simon looked up at the clear sky. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the need to look over his shoulder. Then, we'll show them something they've never seen, he said. What's that? The kid asked. Simon knelt beside him and whispered, what it means to be human. The end, final message and meaning. Some dangers don't attack, they infect. They spread not through weapons, but through belief, memory, and curiosity. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight, but to forget.